Mercedes clearly made mistakes in the 2021 winter break when designing its W13. At the 2022 season start, the W13 was sitting on no man's land for a long time until the team managed to identify the true problem beneath the car, causing all troubles. Mercedes realized that, if they are to compete for championships once more, they need to make serious changes to its concept. You would have watched our video about Ferrari's changes to its car for 2023. If you think that is massive, the change Mercedes is going to do is out of the park. So today, we are going to dive deep into everything we know about the Mercedes off-season plan, and piece out the possible changes they will be making to their concept to get back to being the best in the business. Lewis Hamilton's final race at the 2022 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix ended prematurely, as he had to face a mechanical retirement 3 laps from the Grand Prix finish. Despite all those, the 7-time world champion was grateful to his team for continuing to keep pushing all their hard work on what has been a tough campaign for the Brackley-based squad. Hamilton endured the first pole-less and winless season of his entire F1 racing career. For such a decorated and praised driver, it really was a tough year, which saw him having shouting matches with Toto Wolff in the garage, telling his team over the radio that they have created an awful and undrivable car. It wasn't all bad though, as he did step on the podium few times on the last season. When asked Hamilton to provide a short summary about his experience in the 2022 season, Hamilton said, "Yeah, it really was." But he added, "Ultimately, I think we started with a car that we didn't want and we finished with a car that we didn't want. But we were basically stuck with it. We kept trundling away, kept working away at improving it. But I think the fundamentals have still been there until the end, as you saw this weekend. It's been more of a team-building exercise this year, and I am very, very proud of everybody. Whilst we are not celebrating a world championship, we'll be celebrating them still for their hard work and efforts. I hope that the struggle this year really provides us with the tools and the strength to fight for many more championships moving forward." This was always the goal of Toto Wolff, since he bought a huge stake of the racing team to be a dominant force in Formula One. They were a dominant force for 8 years. I believe we won't be seeing anything like that in the future due to the budget cap-constrained racing ahead. Losing the driver's title by the slightest of margins in 2021-2022 was a chance to triumph back by winning both titles. But the team was overconfident on its findings. They came with an old car and wasted the first 3 days of testing. They could have used those 3 days wisely, realizing their mistakes early. But they were cocky when they assumed that the concept change on the second testing would help. But it clearly didn't. Mercedes had to learn lessons on the hard way last season. And in between that moment, we did witness a humble moment from Toto Wolff, where he did admit the team's mistakes and saying they just expected to win with the W13's concept. Being humble at the beginning of the season made them rethink everything about the W13, and mid-season, the team realized that the problems of the W13 are all fundamental issues, which cannot be fixed with the budget cap in mind. It was the point they realized that the W14 essentially needs an entire concept change. Wolff has previously stated that the W14 of 2023 will have different DNA to its predecessor as Mercedes seek to regain the title lost to Red Bull in 2022. He hinted at a car which retained the zero sidepod idea to challenge next season's RB19 from Milton Keynes. We all know that many teams feel that Red Bull did nail the 2022 regulations properly and are eager to follow the same concept. But we have seen Mercedes doing many different things, so different from its rivals. For example, DAS was one of those brilliant innovations from the Silver Arrows, and Mercedes retaining the zero sidepods concept is the Mercedes style for sure. When asked Toto Wolff about the W14, he said, "I go in the wind tunnel and I say, that thing looks exactly like this year's car," he explained to media. "But they say to me, it's very different underneath. It is about the airflow, the weight distribution, the aero map. Our car fundamentally changed mid-year. We changed the concept, but you couldn't see anything on the bodywork. I think the narrow sidepod concept is like a red herring. It's full of surprises the last time I saw it in the wind tunnel, but they told me it is not the same." That statement from Toto does not make any sense at all at first glance. But if you go through some other hints Mercedes has pointed out about its car development, you start to get a clear picture about the DNA change the team is suggesting. The car changing underneath could mean a few things. The floor could have changed shape, or the actual inside of the car design could have changed. It is hard to see how a change in floor shape or inside shape change mean a change in the car's DNA or a concept change. If the DNA change Wolff means by a change in floor implication, supported with a large amount of aero package changes, such as the rear wing, floor edges, and other elements, then yes, we can agree on Toto's verdict. The one thing, which is not yet making sense, is that any of the changes we talked about before is that those changes will for sure be visible to the naked eye. So, what is Toto talking about, saying that the car looks the same yet? I think with all these changes, and the car looking same, Toto needs to get his eyes checked. For Toto to release a statement like this, it could mean the Mercedes is making changes to the Venturi tunnels of the underfloor. Maybe Mercedes is moving the Venturi tunnel's tightest points, which would move where the downforce is created in the car. This change would make a big change in the pressure maps, and it could potentially be the answer to the bouncing problem, which has been the fundamental problem of the W13. Wolff did also talk about the weight distribution in his statement, which makes us think that the changes to car will be even more bigger than what we have talked till now. So, let's think now. What changes to the car would alter the weight distribution, the airflow, the aero map, and the very DNA of the car? I think it has to be necessarily around the chassis surely. When you look back at Formula 1 cars from 2015, every car featured a push rod suspension at the front and a pull rod suspension at the rear of the car. This was a suspension match, which all teams followed till 2021 in their cars, before 2022. Red Bull and McLaren were the teams which rolled the dice to use the vice versa suspension system on their 2022 cars, and it has worked brilliantly, because they are the only two teams who dealt with porpoising very well out of the 10 teams on the F1 grid. They went for a pull rod suspension at the front, combined with a push rod suspension on the car's rear, by making a fundamental change to the chassis. To avoid confusion, I will call the suspension theories old and new. The old concept is the one used by everyone except Red Bull and McLaren. The old suspension system approach was driven by aerodynamic and packaging related to the high-rake old F1 cars. The reason for Red Bull and McLaren to opt to the new suspension system is to exactly position the front suspension components to keep them sat in front of the front wing, which could prove a considerable influence on the air that comes off the front wing, which is heading towards the center, sides, and floor of the car. Adjusting the positions and the shapes of the aero parts can help move the air in the most wanted areas of the car, more like into the underfloor tunnels, to generate the most needed downforce. One thing I would like to say is that I am not designer nor aerodynamicist, so all I could do is theorize with the information I have got on my hands. So, my theory behind all my assumptions is that suspension systems have its own aerodynamic advantages. The position of the suspension rods, to the position of the springs and dampers, all have aerodynamic potentials, such as mounting the dampers and springs on the car underside allows the front nose to be higher, giving less obstruction to the airflow under the car. Porpoising was caused due to the cars running too low to the ground to create downforce, restricting airflow under the car. Raising the nose allows better airflow under the car, which could be the best solution to eliminate porpoising completely. The reason, I think, why many teams have not moved from the old suspension system to the new system is due to the cost cap. A change in suspension system will mean a change in the DNA of the car, which costs a lot. And in an era where a tight budget is followed and enforced, it is hard for teams to make major changes to their car. Therefore, the only possible time to make the change is on the off-season, in next year's car, when teams are having to build new chassis anyway. Because of regulation changes to the floor of the car, I wonder how many teams looked at McLaren and Red Bull earlier in the season and went, "Oh, I wish we would have thought of that." There are obvious downsides to having your suspension in the new system, otherwise everyone would already be doing it. But most of the teams didn't predict porpoising, so they didn't see what the biggest advantage of the new system would be. You might hear a lot about how the changes that Mercedes are going to make are to the floor or their side pods or some other part of the aero package, but that is all. Those changes are slight alterations to the aero package. If Mercedes are talking about a complete change in concept, a change to the very DNA of the car, the thing that the car is built on, that has to be the chassis. Already running a stiffer suspension on the W13, they could come up with something completely new, but in Formula 1 the technical regulations are so tight that might be impossible. Instead, in their newfound humbleness, they might look up to the RB18 and make some changes according to its aerodynamic philosophy. But would they actually implement a Red Bull concept in their car, which they did not invent or innovate from scratch? Let us know in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching our video today, and if you enjoy our content, subscribe to the channel and have that notifications bell turned on to be made aware of our future uploads, as we have plenty coming up during this Formula 1 off-season.